muted, Brack, and he is. I recognize it, I think. But
Yeah, I'm in my office right now. Yeah.
But Kerry's office is a shrine of all of his coaching experiences with pictures. And anytime you go in there, an hour is sort of a minimum time that you're going to spend talking hockey. And he'll pull out articles and stuff he's put together for the good of the game and about coaching. And I know right now, the issue of trash talking is a real serious moral issue. Why are they playing the game that way? Why are they doing it? What are we teaching them in terms of the values that sport should teach? And I agree with it, Kerry, and I hope we can get.
I was going to say that, one of the ways that, as a coach, you do have the leverage and the power to, because a lot of coaches don't feel they should do it because it, whatever. But I just do zero tolerance on trash talking. If you got time to talk to the opposition, you're not working hard enough in my mind. So, I know there's going to be bits and pieces of it, but and from what I gather, Sammy Joe, I mean, the ladies have really gotten vicious, and is that correct from what you've seen?
Sammy?
I just think more and more women are playing, and so I think women have always been on par in their cultural communities with the men in the community. So yes, there are very progressive women that are not like that, just like there are men, and there are women that are the other end of the spectrum. So I think to blanket all women with that is perhaps a little bit of a misnomer, but yes, it exists as much in women's hockey. We can't say we're immune to it.
Well, it's something that needs to kind of be addressed as time goes along, some way, somehow, because the numbers are dwindling in hockey overall, and there's a lot of reasons why. But
well, and I found it interesting when he talked to the NHL guys about how racism is not acceptable for trash talking. So then I thought, well, what are they trashing each other about? And likely it has to do with women. But so that becomes acceptable, but trash talking about racism does not. So yeah, there is, I think I agree with everybody on this call that it has no place in the game at all. I mean, it shouldn't even be allowed to be part of it. And it was interesting, his perspective that, he thought it was a mental edge that some players were attempting to get. And, but like Jordan said, if it's not acceptable in a classroom, it should not be acceptable by any coach worth a grain of salt within their team either. That's just my opinion.
Well, I think we can use Mr. Tkachuk as a good example. If he probably closed his mouth and didn't be such a disturber, he becomes a top 10 scorer, and he also becomes a very rich man. And I'm sure that Mr. Sutter had that conversation with him, because at the end of the day, his skill set is off the charts. And that's what people really want to come and watch, to sit there and, trash talk to the point where it takes your energy away from being the athlete you could be. He came leaps and bounds. He's a 100-point man from the previous year, where he spent way too much energy, in my mind, involved in, being that type of player, right? I think, kudos to whoever got to him. But I always said if the Flames were going to do well, they were going to have to get him to understand they need his offensive skill ability. They don't need his I guess, what do they call it now? Disturbing, or getting under everyone's skin, or I wasn't a big Ken Linseman fan, and I just don't like that entity of it. I mean, and Tim, and you would have been around, Tim, with a lot of that, and it's always been there. Will it ever leave?
well, we certainly hope so, Brack. And kind of interestingly, you mentioned Ken Linseman, who is obviously a terrific player, but a real shit disturber on the ice, for lack of a better way of saying it. And he he actually when I was growing up in Burlington, Ontario, there's a big tournament there every year. Ken Linsman billeted with our family in Burlington.
Oh, really?
My mom loved him to death. He was such a polite, intelligent. Really, he became quite an art collector, I understand, but a polite, intelligent young man, but took on a different persona on the on the ice. And I was going to add to your comment, like in a bit different area, but a similar area on emotional control. It's my observation and real belief that Sidney Crosby made quite a transformation when Mike Sullivan came on board that allowed them to win the subsequent cups that they did. From one playoff to the next, like he was, and in some ways, in Sid's defense, justifiably, he was a real whiner, complainer, yapper to the referees about, the lack of calls against them. I really believe, and I'd love to know someday, maybe meet Mike someday, but they surely must have had a bunch of conversations, because from one year to the next, Sid's emotional control went from 2 or 3 on the scale to 8 or 10 on the scale, where he just played hockey and focused on hockey, and he was a force, and they won a couple of cups, I think largely, or certainly a large part, because of it. So it's that emotional control aspect of being a great athlete. There's a fine line to walk, as we all know, whether it's in your preparation, getting too excited versus too relaxed. There's an excitement level in between that's sort of perfect, the ideal emotional state, and it carries on to the on-ice stuff. And whether it's the verbal abuse or the emotional control of yourself, really, really important part of being a great athlete and being the best you can be. And really important for all of us as coaches to recognize that element and how it is important in terms of our players being the best they can be. So just kind of interesting thing.
And it is possible as a coach to gain that. I know on the teams that we've had the most success with, we're more focused in on playing the game and not discussing life with the referees, or the kids will do it. If you show that sort of, I call it the no tolerance end of it, but you have to give them a reason why. And I just, one of the best compliments I ever got was from a guy at an Air Canada Cup. He said, "Your team's silent." It was a referee chief. He said, "We don't hear a word from them on the ice at all." And he wondered what the deal was. And I said, we weren't a good enough skilled team to not focus in on being a good team. And that was one of the things that we pushed for, was literally zero tolerance with officials and the opposition. And I just used a simple phrase: if you got time to talk, you're not working hard enough. And, a lot of it goes back on because I was involved in trash talking an awful lot. And I think if I had to do
I can't imagine, Frank.
Huh? Yeah. If I had to do it all over again, I would have never said another word. I would have just been aggressive, because trash talking doesn't, being aggressive and being, I guess, you guys see me play, so, they don't go hand in hand. But, there is a lot of trash talking that goes on. But if I had to do it all over again, I would have just been physical and just looked and laughed and skated back to the bench. And it would have saved me a couple 100 minutes a year too.
I'll reinforce Jordan's point too, that totally agree with all those comments, Brack. And again, it's really important that the coaches walk the walk. If you want your players to be silent, like Brack's team was, then as a coach, you got to walk that walk. And All of us, and I'll include myself, we struggle with that at times, but it's really, really important. And the offshoot of that would, of course, be we'd have more, in terms of numbers, we'd have more and we'd have better people taking on the role of being referees if we all learn to be a little bit more tolerant and respectful of the difficult jobs that they have in policing the game. It's just, that's almost the ugliest part of minor hockey. Let's not talk about the verbal abuse on the ice. Let's talk about the verbal abuse coming from the stands and the parents who are supposed to be the leaders, directed at the referees. It's really, really sad, and hopefully, I mean, Hockey Canada has taken some swings at this in the past, and it seems like it's a ebb and flow kind of thing, and people get tired of making the effort, but we all have to be vigilant and be